It's just the termination petition for Mr. Burke.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for clarifying. All right, let's go into appearances, please.
Lee Tice, lawyer, guardian ad litem.
Ms. Sasha Thomas, counsel for the department.
Christy Brinker, Fostering Solutions Caseworker.
Michael Brooks, I represent Joshua Burke. Mr. Burke, are you present?
He is. He's been supplying from the Lenawee County Jail. I did have to mute him, so I can ask him to unmute.
Michael McFarland, representing Ms. Wright. Please introduce yourself.
Ashley Wright's mom.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good
Eric Burke here on behalf of Mr. Gilson.
And Mr. Robert Gilson, your name for the record, please.
Robert Gilson, father.
Thank you. Okay, so I don't know that Mr. Burke is able to unmute. I can confirm that he is here. Did you need some time to talk with him?
No.
All right, very well.
Your Honor, before we start with the opening, I just want to confirm, I guess, process or who's going first or what's happening. So if I can propose the adjudication termination for Mr. Burke first, the disposition for Mr. Gilson, and then the review portion. Or if there's any objections to that.
No.
No objections.
Yeah.
Sorry, my client was talking to me. I asked her if she had anything. Was that to go forward to the review first and then show cause? Is that what, or the termination?
No, the termination first.
Yeah. I would comment that since he is yet to be even adjudicated, let alone terminated, I assume the rules of evidence do apply.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So then we'll head into the adjudication trial for Mr. Burke.
And Your Honor, I have no opening statement for that case at this time.
Any comments, Mr. Brooks?
I didn't hear what was said.
Just wondering if you wanted to say anything by way of opening.
No.
Well, Mr. McFarland, it's not really about your client. Did you need to weigh in? Want to weigh in?
We support the termination adjudication petition, right?
Ms. Berger, any position?
Not as related to that, Father, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any by way of opening, Ms. Ice?
Your Honor, with respect to, I have visited with the child face to face, and he does not have a bond with this this father. I say this father because he has different potential in the future, but this, I believe the abuse and neglect best interest factors, which we'll get to later, we'll see no contrary evidence to what we present. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, just to confirm, we're operating on the petition that was filed March 2nd.
Your Honor, there was an updated one filed May 17th.
Whenever you're ready with your first witness.
I would like to call Mr. Burke.
He said he was being defiant and he left.
Well, that's the, right, but that's, I'd love to have the officer actually come into the room and put that on record for us.
Yeah, somebody's got to make us a record that he refuses to. Didn't this happen last time we were here?
I think last time he refused to come out of the cell.
Last 3 times.
No, I'm gonna sit right here until they finish the case, his case.
Yes.
This happened last time.
Okay, do we have anybody over at the jail that could unmute and just let us know what happened to Mr. Burke officially? We would really appreciate it. Okay, well, I can tell you that we got a message through my office that he did leave voluntarily, but we can leave that up to verify that or confirm that once we have somebody from the jail.
And then I'll ask to be excused.
Very good. All right, so
Talk me in.
leaning on that until we can have official confirmation, Ms. Thomas, is there anyone else you'd like to call first?
If I may call Miss Ashley Wright, please.
All right, Ms. Wright, come on for a please.
I would like to put it on the record, if I may, that this is not the first time he's refused.
Yes, that is correct.
And can you please just again tell us how you are part of this case?
I am the mother of the child that Joshua Burke is father.
Okay, so you do have a child in common with Mr. Burke?
Correct.
Okay. And how old is that child?
5.
In the 5 years that this child has been alive, have you or Mr. Burke established any custody order of this child?
I don't know. Can I explain a little bit? Okay. So I had him. There was an active PPO on Joshua. He had never been around. So I just filed for, what do they call it, that safety reasons through DHS and under the court, but I don't know if they did anything with it. But he wasn't on anything.
Okay, so do you recall, in these court proceedings, your child being subjected to DNA testing and paternity being established that way with Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Oh, hang on, we're unmuted at the jail. Hi, do we have anybody in the jail that could confirm for us what happened to Mr. Burke? Hello, good afternoon. Is there anyone at the jail? All right, well, I see you then. I'll let you.
Thank you, Your Honor. You had just mentioned that you had filed for PPO on Mr. Burke.
Yeah.
Your Honor, may I approach the-
Wait, hi, good afternoon.
Your Honor, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for popping in. Could we have your name, please?
Yeah, Ethan McClellan.
Thank you, Ethan. Okay, so could you, or Officer McClellan, I apologize. Could you tell us what happened to Mr. Burke?
Yeah, he came into the courtroom. I heard him say something through the door, yada, yada, and then he walked out and just said, I'm done. I'm not talking to him, and walked back into the block. So, yeah, it sounded like he wasn't having it.
Okay, thank you. Did you have any questions or?
I have none.
Okay, anyone else?
No.
Your Honor.
All right, thank you very much, officer, and you're welcome to, we can terminate our feed from the jail. If he changes his mind and he wants to log back in, just log in and we'll let him into the meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, have a good day.
All right, you too.
With that, Your Honor, I ask to be excused. He never showed up after the fact when he walked out the last time I was here. I have no reason to believe he's going to come back from walking out this time. And I don't know his position. I don't know what he thinks or what he doesn't think. And I ask to be excused.
Objections?
None, Your Honor.
None.
No objection.
No objection.
Very well, I agree with the reasons stated on record that allowing you to be excused is appropriate under the circumstances. Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
Right.
Thank you for allowing for the interruption this time.
Absolutely. Your Honor, may I approach the witness? Ms. Joyce, can you identify what this packet is?
This is the active PPO. However, please know that there was one when Craig was born, or, I'm sorry, he was born as well. That I hadn't shown a copy of, but I recently have found it. If we need it. So this would be the second PPO, and this is also an extension on this. So this one is extended, like this is 2 years
It's
worth.
still valid, correct?
Yes, yes.
And in that packet that I handed you, it's quite lengthy, longer than just the petition for the PPO. Can you just briefly summarize what you included when you provided that to the court?
These were screenshots of threats and just him being, I guess you could say, I don't want to say belligerent, I don't know if that's the right word, but he was just, I don't know, he was in a way I've never seen him before.
And would it be fair to estimate there about how many pages of screenshots that you had to include?
I think there was, I think there was maybe about 90.
About 90 pages, that's
I know it was very lengthy and they stated that when I had gotten it, it was quite.
And for the record and for the court's knowledge, can you please explain why you felt it was necessary on both occasions to file for a PPO against Mr. Burke?
Well, for the first one, before birth, he had shown up at my residence and put things on my vehicle and destroyed my vehicle, made threats to me. I did make a police report and get a PPO. And then I hear from him about 5 years later. PPO was no longer valid. I didn't expect to ever hear from him. And we had some legal things that were not about the child that we took care of. And then he did his belligerent, crazy outburst again. So I got another one. That time he was threatening to cut me. He was trying to, take my property and destroy it. He had tried to come into my home that I wasn't staying at, but it was property of mine. At the time, he was, again, in a way I had never seen him before, that he scared me more than he did ever.
Were you ever in a relationship with Mr. Burke?
Before the first PPO, before birth, yes.
Okay.
But after that, no.
Okay, and so about what year was that?
16?
Okay. And in your relationship, were there ever any concerns about domestic violence? Like, police have to be involved or CPS?
I had one incident, and that was the incident that I left at. To my understanding, CPS was really trying to just leave. They did show up after a police report, and they were just, trying to help me. They helped me with the PPO. We're talking about, places I could go stay at to keep him away. I didn't talk to him at that point, so and that was pretty much it. They did come out when the police were called, but I left that night. The police were there, and I had never went back. So,
And during your relationship with Mr. Burke, and since I guess you've known him, you made a comment that you're not sure, or the reason you filed review is because you hadn't felt that afraid of him before. You'd never seen him.
the second time.
Okay.
The first time, up until that situation, he did not scare me. He did not. There wasn't anything like that. But like I said, the first time he hit me or did anything, I left. And I never went back. When we did reconnect over these last few years, it was never anything relationship wise. It was strictly getting things in order, so he had no reason to contact, for me at least. And he just didn't understand that.
Did you ever know of him to use any substances that might have changed his behavior, altered his behavior?
From what the Josh that I know, no, he would not. But as of recently, I would not rule it out.
Okay. And in that time between when your son was born until present, has he reached out to you to try to establish a relationship with your child?
When we did connect, it was strictly about the properties and not our child. He didn't even ask about him until long after the conversation had started about our related properties.
And did he know that you were pregnant with this child?
Yes, he did. He in fact even posted a picture of the ultrasound when we knew what he was, that he was a boy. So he definitely knew.
And although he knew, he said he never reached out to try to
No, he did not.
contact him or anything.
No.
And that PPO has been in place since 2021.
The current one, yes.
Your Honor, if I may ask the court receive the document that the witness has. It is a PPO from upstairs, and it has the extensions filed for 2022 up until July of 2023.
No objections.
I have received and reviewed that piece and have no objection to the court accepting it as evidence.
Very well, I will receive it. Deputy Ames. And I just have a couple more questions. Your attorney at the opening said that you support this petition to terminate Mr. Burke's parental rights.
Yes, 100%.
Can you tell us in your own words why you believe that would be in your child's best interest to do that?
Well, like I said, he's in a state that I've never seen before. And it is one of the scariest things from him I've ever heard or seen. Really from anyone. I've never seen anyone act the way that he has. He has in the past made comments about how he was going to take him and flee. And honestly, even before he has made those comments with the previous PPO and in between, I had that fear. He also has himself or his whatever girlfriend he had at the time would contact my family members to try to he was harassing for years. But he would never directly contact me, and I never told him he couldn't after the PPO expired originally. So he's always kind of made me nervous ever since that first one expired. But I didn't have enough to get one, if that makes sense. And he scares me to a point where I don't know what he would do, and it scares me, if that makes any sense at all. He's very different than the man that I knew. And it's not good for anybody.
Does your child have any relationship with any of Mr. Burke's family members?
No.
So there's no extended family members that
No.
have provided support or anything? Okay, thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Nice. I think this is a repeat, but Mr. Burke, has he ever met Craig?
No.
What is Craig's understanding of who his father is?
Him and I have never talked about it. He has said some things that I think he's overheard, or he's thought of because he's around other kids with fathers, but he has no real understanding of the situation. He just knows that he's not here. He's not around. he says normal kid things, you know, but I can't really answer them because he's 5, you know, they're hard to answer and they're hard, you know, like, yeah, he'll ask me where he is and I'll just say he's not here right now. You know, because what can you say?
Okay, wasn't there a time, and since this case has been open, where Mr. Burke was AWOL and you were pretty worried about that?
Hey, what?
He was missing on bond. He had run away on a bond or a sentencing.
Yeah, he had run away on a halfway house sentencing or something.
Wasn't he in the hospital or something?
He was, correct.
And what was he in the hospital for?
The hospital did call me. I guess he asked them to. They said it was COVID and he was in intensive care and they didn't think he was gonna make it. But I don't know for sure. I mean, I don't know any more than that. And it was all the way in Indiana. I didn't look into it. I didn't really care to. I was just like, you don't need to be calling me. And they didn't call me again.
And so you were, at the time you got that call, you knew that he was away from placement.
Correct. The night that he left placement, he did contact me. I contacted police and they said until they got a copy from the courts, they could not do anything. And I had given them his whereabouts as well and they didn't go there. So I don't really know. That was before he had left the state as well.
Did you worry about him showing up and hurting him?
Yes, absolutely. I also at time informed Linda where my son is currently staying, to let her know as well, because I was he knows where she lives and I was nervous that he would show up because I don't know what he would do anymore.
In the time that you've known Mr. Burke, has he parented any child? Does he have any children besides
He has only children, but he has not, his oldest, he has not been active with. His youngest, who he had after I left, as far as I'm aware, he was around for a short time until they had broken up. And he tried to afterwards, but that was before his massive spiral that he has had since everything.
Do you know anything? So there was a period of time where you and Mr. Burke were like joint on a land contract, right?
That's the business we had to take care of a few years ago that he had originally contacted me for.
Is that untangled now?
Yes, absolutely. He has no ties to it whatsoever.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Ms. Brinker, how are you familiar with this case?
I am the foster care caseworker,
How long have you been the foster care caseworker?
a little over a year now.
And when you took over, was there a previous foster care worker?
It was, yes.
And when you took over case management responsibilities of this case, did you have the opportunity to speak with that worker or review the file?
Yes.
And as relates to the child that is subject to this particular petition, had at the time that you took over, had paternity been established?
It had not. I believe he was incarcerated, and I think that they had done a mouth swab, but it didn't. They didn't get enough saliva or something, and then I know that he was released, and then we didn't have anything for a while, and then when he was reincarcerated, I believe around December, I think that's when or later on in the fall was when we actually got the swab and was able to establish paternity.
And prior in your case notes or your tenure as a case manager, were there any notes about Mr. Burke contacting the agency to establish paternity or asking for help in that process?
He has never reached out to the agency.
Did the agency know that Mr. Burke was potentially a putative father or the legal father?
Ms. Wright had disclosed.
And during that time, do your records reflect whether Mr. Burke was provided notice of the hearings and encouraged to participate?
Of course, yes.
And you noted that in the fall time, DNA was received by this court and the legal paternity determination was made. Since then, has Mr. Burke reached out to you to discuss his child?
He has not, no.
And what efforts have you made to try to engage him?
I had sent him the updated USPs. I delivered those to jail since he's been incarcerated for the majority of the time that I've had this case and that we've established paternity. So I have delivered the USPs. I have done jail visits with him when he has been willing to visit via video, and I've just received threats from him, no interest in his child's well-being.
Do you have an opinion as to whether Mr. Burke could provide proper care and custody to this child?
Yeah, he has again not reached out in probably 5 years to provide us. His register of actions is one of the lengthiest that I've ever seen. So I would be definitely concerned about his ongoing criminality. He is homeless, but when he was released, I believe it was December, for a short period, he was homeless and living with friends and living along the river. So no housing, no employment, so several concerns that you would not be able to meet the needs of the child.
You mentioned his criminality in there, right, via the register of actions. There are several charging documents or judgments of sentencing, or we call nolle press, but and then you also have, or we also have the printed register of actions from online for district court, correct?
Correct.
And I'm going, Your Honor, may I approach the witness? You may. I'm going to hand these back to you. And if you can just go through, I guess, starting with these and note what the case number is and what the document is.
Okay. The case number is 172749, and the charge is larceny. Let's see.
You said that charge was larceny?
Pardon me?
What did you say the charge was on that document?
Larceny?
And that was from 2017?
Correct. 9/26/17.
Okay.
Offense date was 8/14/17. December 14th, 2022. Attempted police assault, obstruction. That's for domestic violence, second offense. The date on that is November 24th, 2021. From December 9th of 2021, assault with a dangerous weapon, habitual offender, fourth offense. Assault with a dangerous weapon. Weapons carried concealed, assault with a weapon, and police assault.
And then there are two printed register of actions from district court. Can you just briefly note what those cases are?
Sure. 1/11/23, first degree home invasion, second degree arson, assault with a dangerous weapon, where it has 3 charges. And then, and that is pending adjourned for competency hearing. Next hearing is scheduled for June 8th, 23 at 9 a.m. And then February 7th, 2023, jail's possession of weapon in jail, assault of a prison employee. And that's the 2 charges for that. And looks like that is also scheduled for probable cause on June 8th, 2023.
In the petition that you drafted, you did name or listed several other charges or convictions. And based on the documents that you have there, one, where were those documents provided to you from?
From the court office.
Upstairs, there's
Yes, the
circuit
court.
court.
Sorry.
And based on that, and then when you got his criminal history, how did you determine that those charges had taken place? I guess, like, was it an iChat run or how his criminal history?
Yes. So when paternity was established, our agency does run the iChats. I don't forget what my supervisor does.
And that's where the other
Charges are pulled from, yes.
okay, thank you. And when a paternity was established, did you also run a central registry check?
Yes.
And what did that show you? Do you recall?
I did not run it against my supervisors run that, so I don't recall, but I know that he is on the central registry. I don't recall the details.
That's okay. So you do know that he is on it. And did he have just one CPS case in the past, or were there others?
There's been multiple, not only with this case, but with his other children.
Okay. And do you remember or generally recall the nature of those CPS complaints?
I do know that one of them was domestic violence on one of his other partners, and I believe that he did also abuse his child. Was one of the allegations.
And based on your investigation, I guess, so doing the iChat, the central registry run, trying to make contact with him, do you have an opinion as to whether he is a safe person for this child to be around?
Yeah, he is definitely not safe to be around this child, the public, the jail employees at this point. Yeah, there's definitely concerns regarding his mental health.
And can you elaborate a little bit on that? We don't have any proof or documents on his mental health. So can you just explain why you made that statement?
Sure. So, I mean, he's appeared, I think, in court for us one time, maybe twice, that in the duration where he has claimed that he's a president, a sovereign citizen. It was after our hearing in January when he came through the hallway and threatened Ms. Wright, my supervisor, myself, all the foster parents present, that he wanted to see his child, or else there's just been demonstrated mental instability. The charges on the first, again, I believe he was homeless. And then when he was arrested on January 19th, he shot a flare gun into a random person's house. And again, just reading the arrest report on that and reading the details of what happened in jail, how he manufactured a toothbrush and attempted to stab the guard that was serving him breakfast that morning. Definite mental instability. He was adjourned for a competency examination in January and had a psych eval done. It was determined that he was restorable. However, it's been several months when we've attempted to have contact with him, and again, he's refusing to come out of his cell and refusing to participate. So,
And for the child's best interest, this child, how long has this child been in care?
20 months. 21 months.
And by your testimony and that of Ms. Wright, this child does not know Mr. Burke, correct?
Correct.
So is there a bond?
There's no bond.
And has Mr. Burke been able to demonstrate any parenting ability?
None. No.
And I believe that Ms. Heiss had asked Ms. Wright if Mr. Burke has other children and if he's active in their lives. Do you have any knowledge on that point?
I do not believe that I know that he does have other children. I do not believe that he's active in their life. So.
And were voluntary services offered to Mr. Burke?
Yes. Again, his case service plan was I offered to him at jail. I discussed services in jail, and again, he made threats and claimed to be the president. So
He has not been able to
correct.
actively engage.
Correct.
And where is this child currently placed?
He is currently placed in a fictive kin placement.
Does that fictive kin have any relation to Mr. Burke?
No.
Has Mr. Burke's family been explored for placement?
Mr. Burke, we have not yet received any family information from Mr. Burke's family.
Have you ever spoke with Craig about Mr. Burke?
I have not.
Has a child ever brought up Mr. Burke to you?
I don't believe so, no.
Does this child have any mental health or emotional health needs?
He just did have a trauma assessment, and he does have ADHD and PTSD.
Do you have an opinion as to whether Mr. Burke would be able to parent a child with ADHD or PTSD?
Mr. Burke would not be able to parent the child.
Is there anything else you'd like to say on behalf of the child's best interest? Your Honor, I don't know logistically how to do this, but I would ask the court to receive the charging and judgment documents and the register of actions for the file. I don't know if each needs to be marked as a different exhibit or if they can be lumped together as Petitioner's Exhibit 2, but I would ask the court to receive those documents.
No objection.
No objection.
No position.
All right, I'm happy to receive them however you prefer, Ms. Thomas.
Yeah, I think one exhibit for all of them would be appropriate.
Very good. Deputy Answer General. It's nice.
Ms. Brinker, regarding Craig's need for stability and permanency, would you characterize Craig's experience in this case as he's thriving, he's well settled, he's doing well?
He is doing well, yes.
Craig sees his sibling often,
Correct, yes.
and that is not, the sibling is not a child of this father, correct?
Correct.
Although the bond may be disruptive or a negative bond, there is a bond between siblings.
Yes,
They're familiar with each other.
yes,
They play together.
yes.
Thank you. Your Honor. No further questions.
Can you redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you for your testimony. You may return your seat.
This is a pretty straightforward case. I believe the evidence, by preponderance of the evidence, shows that the statutory grounds for personal jurisdiction over Mr. Burke have been met. This court entered an order of paternity in September of 2022. And at that point, Mr. Burke had participated in hearings. He had failed to establish any paternity or take any initiative to do that. We have Ms. Wright's testimony that he also knew she was pregnant with his child more than 5 years ago and still failed to do anything about that other than make threats to her to kidnap the child and leave. In addition to the abandonment, there's also his unfit home environment. One, because he doesn't have a home environment at this time, he is incarcerated, and also based on his criminality, and the described mental health instability, we believe that that is sufficient for the grounds for adjudication. And as relates for the grounds for termination, at initial disposition, we believe that abandonment has been pled and sufficiently presented to this court, and also that Mr. Burke is the legal parent of the child who did abandon this child, and so we believe that that is an aggravating circumstance. And for the grounds for termination, we have pled under MCL 712A.19B3, subsection A2, desertion of a child for 91 days or more, which we believe has barely been met, and he to this day still fails to even participate or engage in these proceedings or show any interest in having a relationship with his child. And then also under subsection J, based on the conduct capacity of the child's parents, the child would be harmed if returned to the parent's home. And again, I think that we have all personally witnessed this, but also we've had the testimony of Ms. Wright and Ms. Brinker on this point, and also the charging documents or the judgments that indicate he has an assaultive history and tendency. We have a judge in the circuit court who has granted a PPO based on the harassing nature of his communication with Ms. Wright, and the child is also covered under that. And so we believe that that is clear and convincing evidence grounds for termination exist. As relates to the best interest factors, this child has been in care for 20 months, and yes, this case did start with Ms. Wright, but during that 20 months, Mr. Burke has failed to take any steps in order to safeguard his child. This child has been in limbo for that amount of time. And Mr. Burke has not demonstrated any ability to parent him, to provide for him, or have any interest in even establishing a bond with him. The fictive kin is not connected to this child through Mr. Burke at all. There are no extended relatives that would weigh against this termination and that relationship. And based on those things, we believe that it is in this child's best interest to terminate Mr. Burke's parental rights at this time, and we ask the court to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, Mr. McFarland?
My client supports the relief sought.
Ms. Berger?
I have no comment, Your Honor.
Ms. Heiss?
I join the agency's statement. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. The court finds all interested parties were given notice, particularly Mr. Burke was given notice and the opportunity to review the petition that was filed against him. We offered again today for him to talk with his attorney. He declined that. He declined participation in today's hearing, but nevertheless, he was informed of what the decision was that the decision on the request for termination of his parental rights was being made today. I do find that there has been, frankly, clear and convincing evidence supplied for the court to take jurisdiction over Mr. Burke based on MCL 712A.2B1 and 2. He was established the legal father and given ample opportunity to step forward and request care and custody. Obviously, there had already been some things raised that would have constituted red flags and required him to have a good look at whether or not he was able to provide a safe environment for the child. But nevertheless, he was informed, and he did have a duty at the time he was given the results of that DNA test to make a determination as to whether or not he wanted to seek care and custody of the child, and he's declined to do so all the way up until today. So he certainly has not provided care and custody, and the household, both historically and currently, has been plagued by criminality, vagrancy, lack of employment, lack of housing, instability, both mentally and physically, frankly, by Mr. Burke, and that is certainly not an environment that's safe for a child. So there's clear and convincing evidence based on the personal protection order observations made by Ms. Reach, and that covers three rights and that covers the child. So more than one judge has determined that it's dangerous for this person to be around this child, as well as the documented criminality, I should say, beginning in 2017 and extending right up into today. Emphasized by the fact that Mr. Burke, if he wanted to, would have been appearing courtesy of Illinois County Jail. He does have those very serious felonies pending, which are simply just an expression of some of the issues that have been clearly plaguing him in that arena for a significant period of time. The statutory grounds for termination of parental rights were accurately articulated also by the prosecutor, as well as the grounds to request termination at the initial disposition. They do have the mandate, and I recognize that it is appropriate under 722.6381A1 and 2, having had Mr. Burke established as a legal parent by DNA, and of course the abandonment, as we've already reviewed on record. Certainly with Mr. Burke being the perpetrator of that abandonment, certainly he has been in jail quite a bit of the time, but nevertheless, he did have the opportunity at numerous points to step forward and request care and custody and request to be part of this child's life, and has failed to do so. And we certainly have clear and convincing evidence of that. The further grounds for consideration, 712A.19B3 and A2, desertion of the child again, has already been established, as well as J, based on the conduct or capacity of the child's parent, that he would be harmed if he's returned to the home of his father, has also been proven by clear and convincing evidence. Again, I would cite the historical past and present criminality, his lack of incentive to participate in any way, shape, or form, and the fact that while he's currently incarcerated, has been incarcerated for much of the period of time we've known that he's the legal father, he's been unable to secure employment or a job, and has demonstrated mental instability and threatening and aggressive behavior, resulting in many charges and convictions, but also simply establishing that he has a very serious risk of harm around a child. And there certainly is no period of time during which we would expect him to overcome those challenges, especially as it relates to his child and the very young age of his child, which leads the court into the determination under the best interest factors. I do find that there is a preponderance of the evidence supporting termination of Joshua Burke's parental rights. As I've already cited, this is a young child. He's been in care for 18 months. There is certainly no bond between this child and his parent. We must lay the blame for that at the feet of Mr. Burke, who has been occupied with his own challenges, but also with the lack of any initiative to take on those challenges. And this is a very young child who needs permanency, stability, and finality. He has some special needs that were articulated today that need to be attended to. So this is not just a child who would be able to assist, if you will, in many ways. It's a child who needs extra attention to address some of his mental health challenges. And of course, those are perhaps biological, but also as a result of some of the other traumatic events that have been happening in his life that contribute to his current condition, which is effectively the need for recovery in a permanent, stable household where those challenges, he can just focus on those rather than worrying about whether or not he would be at risk as a result of a continued legal tie to this person. Mr. Burke clearly demonstrated that he has no ability to parent, no option to be around even other people safely at this period of time, as our caseworker pointed out. He was offered voluntary services, declined those very clearly. He does have the benefit of visiting with his sibling, which is a strength, and has nothing to do, unfortunately, with Mr. Burke's facilitating that. There's a high likelihood that he'll be adopted in the place that he is currently living, which has provided him certainly the stability that he needs to continue his recovery and to work on identifying and overcoming some of those issues that we discussed earlier. There are no relatives to consider at this juncture for Mr. Burke. But we do have the opinion of our caseworker and our LGAL that also support in their capacity as experts in their fields the request to terminate his parental rights. So for all those reasons, it will be the order of the court that the adjudication of Mr. Burke is taking place today, but also that as the initial disposition and the file as it relates to him, his parental rights will be terminated for reasons expressed on the record today. There will be no more efforts towards reunification or any efforts to prevent removal. Are there any other questions? No. I think the court will issue that order. Now, as it relates to the initial disposition of Mr. Gilson, would you like to begin on Ms. House?
Your Honor, Ms. Brigger can take a stand again, please.
And Ms. Heiss, did you want to report at all on this child before we get started?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I was able to see him in person, and I visited him while he was visiting his mother. Most importantly, the case report, he is changing placements. He is, I'm sorry, Gilson, just a minute. Most notably in this case, for this child, the social worker, the counselor, you know, I really wanted that piece in place, and that piece is finally in place. And that piece says that even this father, who is a fresh face on the scene and someone that we wanted to give some time to see if we could have a parent for this child, even his visits are sporadic and inconsistent and causing harm. So that's an important piece to me. I think that's an important, a new piece. This child has had meltdowns to the extent that she needs hospitalization, temporary, and they didn't give her any medication, and they called it a behavioral outburst, but and allowed her to discharge without mental health treatment. But this counselor is trying to communicate to us that even though he's new to the case, he's not helping the child move on and become healthy. That she's avoiding her trauma, she's avoiding talking through things, and the case itself is hard for her, and including this father. So I know that we're at disposition, and I know that we are. I would ask you to continue the therapeutic visits. That's all. Thank you.
Ms. Brinker, you want to pick up to her?
Ms. Baker, today, as it relates to Mr. Gilson's disposition, what is the current permanency goal for him or for the child in general, his child?
The current permanency goal for Adriana is reunification.
And would she be at a substantial risk of harm if the court were to return her or to Mr. Gilson's care and custody?
Yes.
Can you please elaborate with that?
Yes, Mr. Gilson moved back to the area after being absent from Adriana's life for 5 years. He moved back to the area in December. They started visits a few months after the idea of her father reappearing in her life was introduced to her by her therapist. So she doesn't really have a very strong bond with him. He has lived with his mother for the duration. Last Wednesday, he failed to confirm his parenting visit, and I was notified that he had moved an hour and 40 minutes away from his child, and under the hopes that he was going to be getting a new job. So he has not been able to provide resources, housing, and again, the bond is lacking between him and his child.
And you just mentioned some of the risks, I guess, but would you consider those also barriers to reunification at this time?
Absolutely, yes.
And are there any other barriers?
He has not parented before, so one of the case service items was parenting classes, and especially with Adriana's increased behaviors, it was also recommended that he take parenting classes specifically geared towards trauma, children with trauma, in addition to the other factors that I just mentioned.
And has he been provided like a voluntary case service plan?
Yes, a voluntary case service plan has been discussed.
And did you offer any voluntary services to help reduce the barriers that you just mentioned?
We did discuss the parenting classes. I told him that he could reach out to the Hillsdale CMH to look for parenting classes there. I also recently just referred him for a psychological evaluation with Dr. Haugen, which is scheduled for, they offered today, and the next available was July, so he's scheduled for July.
Do you know if Mr. Gilson has transportation to attend these appointments?
He does not have transportation. As discussed last Wednesday, when he declined his parenting visit, he stated that he does not have transportation to make it during the week. However, a friend that he's living with, he's relying on him for transportation to hopefully be able to get transportation to the parenting visits, and that would be his mode of transportation at the moment.
In the case service plan that you have proposed, did you have an opportunity to discuss it with Mr. Gilson?
Yes, we did discuss it, yes.
And did he feel that it was doable?
Yes.
Tailored to help him?
Yes, and we did discuss it briefly during the last court hearing as well. We kind of went over it, so.
And has he done anything in this case service plan at all? Has he started any of that?
Well, again, he did an interview for this full-time position. I have not heard whether or not he got it, but he moved an hour and 40 minutes away from his daughter, so it's my hope that he got it to obtain full-time employment to help rectify that. So I guess that would be something that he has worked towards.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness as relates to Mr. Gilson's disposition order, and would ask the court to receive and accept the proposed case service plan that is attached to the court report for today.
Ms. Brinker, if my client were to move back in with his mother, would that home now be approved?
I'm sorry?
If my client were to move back in with his mother, would that home be an approved home?
So I've recently also just received last week that his mother's central registry has been expunged. So she is now a viable option that I can go out and do a home study on her home to see if that would be an appropriate placement.
And have you scheduled that?
I have not, no.
Are you planning on it?
Yes.
Okay. And it seemed as if the parenting time logs showed positive interactions between my client and his daughter. Is that accurate, or do you disagree with that?
I do think that they're positive. I think that as the counselor's letter states, and also I believe the logs probably state there are some concerns regarding his ability to interact appropriate with her. I think that probably spending 40 minutes together on YouTube during a 1 hour visit watching TV is probably not the best option to try to build a bond. But again, parenting classes will definitely help him with that.
Okay, and have those started yet?
No, because he moved.
Okay, and has there been a new referral sent, or is he able to do those anywhere locally for him?
Yeah, he can definitely seek if he wants to look on his own. I have not had a chance because again, I was just notified on Wednesday of his location change.
Okay, but you will be referring those.
Yes, absolutely.
And in review of the court report, it looks like he's only missed one parenting time this reporting period. Is that accurate?
Well, no, 2, but yes. Yep.
Okay, and it was reported that his parenting time is sporadic. Would you consider missing one parenting time or 2 sporadic?
Yeah, because this reporting period, which was a shortened reporting period, we haven't had a full 3 months, so.
Okay. Have you ever discussed with Mr. Gilson his ability to provide any sort of resources or support or clothing or anything like that for his daughter?
He has discussed that he's only worked part-time since being employed with the Dollar General or Dollar Store in January. He's only ever had part-time employment, although I've never seen a pay stub. And he only brings home $50 a week.
And have you reviewed his child support withdrawals?
I have not known.
So it is quite possible that he does have arrearages that are going to someone for support of his daughter.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so it's not entirely accurate that he's not providing any resources.
I think that his disappearance for 5 years, I'm sure that whoever has cared for his daughter in the past 5 years, he's, probably they're playing catch up as well with his child support.
Okay, but he is providing support now.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
But again, I've not seen proof, so I'm taking him at his word.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. McFarland?
Seems to me that some of the barriers such as housing, income, transportation could be resolved by him receiving a full-time job, correct?
Correct.
Necessarily moving, there may be some positive benefits from that also, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further.
Ms. Heiss?
So during this shortened review time, the child has gone to the hospital 2 times for a crisis. Is that true?
That is correct,
And at
yes.
least one of the times he showed up out there, didn't he?
He did.
And has he followed up with any of those doctors, or
He has not.
how about you served him with this court report, correct?
Yes,
In the court report was the discharge paperwork for the child, correct?
correct.
There were recommendations on that discharge paperwork. Has he followed any of those to your
He
knowledge?
has not. During our 20-minute phone conversation last Wednesday, the conversation was all about him and his job and where he was living and how we needed to move visits to the weekend so it could be accommodated. The entire visit was about him. Not once did he ask how his child was doing. The visit, or the purpose of the phone call was also to notify him that she had moved placements, and he never once asked about where she was living now or what her new placement looked like either.
So he has been given the information that this child has heightened needs, correct?
Correct.
We're 20 months into this case, and now with this disposition, we'll meet again presumably in 90 days to check his progress, correct?
Correct.
Do you think he understands the importance of the time frame for him to benefit from services?
I think he understands. It's a great question because when he came back into the picture, we talked about the importance of all of these things of him providing stability because that is what the child needs at this point. So I think that him moving away, even if it is for a full-time job, again, isn't providing her stability.
So in this court report, he would have received the report from Jennifer Franklin, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And it gives him feedback about her therapeutic visits with this dad.
Correct.
And the feedback is that if you asking her about the child, the visits with him are not helping, is that correct?
I believe that's what the report states, yes.
Thank you, I have nothing further.
Any redirect?
Your Honor, I know that this court report has been mentioned several times tonight, and did skip over it just for purposes of the dispo, but, the disposition. But I am wondering if the court would like me to take testimony on that court report for the review portion as well now.
Mr. McFarland, do you have a preference on that?
I think that'd probably be appropriate.
Very good, go ahead.
And I apologize for that.
That's all right. I should say for the record too, that it is the initial disposition for Mr. Gilson, but it also is a review and a permanency planning hearing as it relates to the children and Ms. Rights. So that's what we're talking about, and that's what all of the documents I've been prepared and anticipating today.
Ms. Brinker, on that note, for purposes of the review, your court report includes several pages of attachments. In your cover letter, thank you for including that, indicates that there are the case service plans for the parents, but then a letter from Ms. Franklin, 2 letters from Ms. Franklin, the school reports for the oldest child, and then the safety plan for that oldest child, a second psychological evaluation for mom, the parenting time notes, and then the police reports for Mr. Burke at this point, which has already been dealt with. Are there any other updates or modifications that you need to make to your court report or to any of those attachments that you're aware of?
Yes, because the court should have received the DHS 69 and 30 that Adriana has officially moved to a new placement. Her second placement that she was doing very well in gave us notice on May 19th, which is noted in the court report. We sought new placement for her and were able to place her on the, well, she began staying with them on the 24th and then officially accepted her on May 30th. So that is new in addition to the court report.
Is there anything else?
And then again, additional FTM was held with mom on 5/31 to discuss the placement changes of both of the children and the upcoming requested goal change for court today. Also on 5/31, as just mentioned, Dad's visit was canceled due to his lack of transportation due to his move to Clinton Township. And then again, we haven't updated. I supervised the parenting visit last Thursday with Ms. Heiss being present, where we had another behavioral outburst from Adriana.
Both children remain outside of Ms. Wright, of their parents' care and custody.
Correct.
The oldest child is now moved to another home. And is she familiar with that family that she was moved to?
They have been respite caregivers for her in the past. So she has spent some time there before being moved there on the 24th.
Is that a licensed foster home?
It is, yes.
Or at this point in time, is that home willing to provide permanence to this child?
Not at this time, no.
So is it fair to say that if Ms. Wright is not reunified with this child, then this child will likely have another move?
Potentially, yes.
Is this child aware of that situation?
Is she aware of the situation? It's been one crisis after another with her over the last 3 weeks, and that's not something that I think is a topic to be broached right now.
Thank you. The youngest child. He is still with fictive kin, correct?
He is.
And what is the plan? And I know that's in here, but can you just highlight it for our understanding?
Sure. So the fictive kin placement, which had both children initially, it's of advanced age, and it's not willing to be able to be a permanent placement for Craig. And we have enlisted respite providers for Craig, which they all get along beautifully. And they would be a permanent placement for Craig. He loves going there. When I do have visits with him, he tells me I can't wait to go with Chelsea and Trevor. And I ask him why he wants to go there, and he's like, we have fun, We went camping. I get teachers' reports that he goes to school and talks about all of the fun and adventures that he's having with this family. So today is his last day of school. They are picking him up from school today, and the plan is to transition him this week to move with him, being that they are going to be full-time caregivers. And his placement that has been with him for the last 2 years will be their respite provider, so that he will maintain that relationship through all.
So at this time, though, the children are still not going to be placed together.
Correct.
And I'm asking that because it's going to lead me to my next question. I don't know that it's in your report. I'm sorry, my brain is sort of all over the place here, but you've discussed with me at least that you have a request, or you would like a request to suspend parenting time for Ms. Wright, correct?
Yes.
If Ms. Wright does not have parenting time, how will these children maintain their sibling bond?
So the placement for Craig did meet Adriana. They all had dinner together. And in talking with the new placement for Craig, I did discuss with them the possibility of adoption of Craig, and also if they would be open to the consideration of potentially adopting his sister. And they had been talking about it, and they are open to the possibility. They are most interested at this point in providing permanency and stability for Craig and getting him stabilized before they would consider moving Adriana into their home. But it is definitely a possibility.
And I don't know that you answered this necessarily, but is it fair to say that the two new placements would work together for those
yeah.
children to see each other?
Yes, absolutely. I did discuss that with Adriana's new placement as well, that I would be requesting today that visits be suspended, and that I would like to keep the weekly visits if possible, if we could continue, so that the kids still are able to see each other and have that sense of normalcy.
And what would be the risk of harm to the children if the court were to return them to Ms. Wright's care and custody today?
Again, my visit on Thursday night, Ms. Heiss was there for the first hour. The second visit, Adriana became very escalated. And her mom was yelling at her and saying, "Why aren't you listening to me? What's wrong with you? You need to listen. You need to follow directions." And Adriana shut it out, and she said, "Because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing." And Adriana wanted so badly to be able to go back and live with her mom. And she said, for a long time, I didn't know who.
Take your time, Christy.
I didn't know who to believe. She's like, but I believe her. I believe Christy. And this little girl, I spent so much time with her in the hospital, spending the night with her in the hospital. And it's been 2 years, and mom is continuing to show by her third psych eval, cannot tell the truth, paints herself in this light. It's in the court report. I mean, the unstable housing, the unstable employment. This little girl is living with the hopes that she's going back to her mom, and there is no hope of her going back to her mom, because her mom cannot provide the stability and permanency and safety that she needs. Sorry.
You said a lot of what you put in an email to me, but there was, you did send me an email giving me an update on this case yesterday. And you, in that email, do you recall what you said, or can you tell the court how you felt you've become more familiarized with this case? Or do you want to reread the email?
Be easier. So I sent Leah a text yesterday and Nastasia an email last night at 4:45. And I just said, if you make one thing happen, we have to suspend parenting time. And I put it in caps. I said, I'm sorry for shouting, but I cannot stress this enough. I supervised a parenting time visit on Thursday night, and Lee was there, and everyone was on their best behavior until she left. The kids immediately started fighting, and I had to call Craig's caregiver to come pick him up early because Adriana was having one of her episodes, which culminated with her mom screaming at her, "Why don't you listen to me? Why aren't you doing what you're supposed to do?" To which Adriana responded, "Because you're not doing what you're supposed to do." I didn't know who to believe for a long time, but I believed Christy. It was very powerful and very emotional. And Linda, Craig's placement, Adriana's previous placement, was there to pick up Craig, and she was able to help calm her down and hold her and hug her. I can't begin to articulate how strongly I feel because I have lived and breathed this case more than I've seen my own family in these past 2 weeks. My heart aches for this child and how badly she needs some finality to be able to move on and get the help that she needs to help process all of her feelings of ambiguity that she's had to deal with over the last 2 years. She is not in a permanent placement, but the current foster mom is in the counseling program and set to graduate in December. I feel like that this is going to be what she needs over these next few months while we stabilize her. And Craig's moving in with his new placement, who also would like to adopt. It's my hope that we can potentially reunify the kiddos in a few months. His new placement has been discussing and are open to the possibility once Craig is settled.
Thank you. When you say that you have lived and breathed this case and you have been in Adriana's world, I think your report hints on this a little bit, but maybe not as abundantly clear as it really is. How many hours have you been with her a day? Like,
I mean, her first hospitalization, both of her parents were there. And the social worker kept saying, she has got stars in her eyes. She is so happy. This is what she wants. I walked in the first morning and she said, look, Christy, she's like, my mom fits on one side, my dad fits on the other side, and Craig can fit in the middle of my hospital bed, like one big happy family. She, again, and the social worker at the hospital said, you know, her parents have been here nonstop for the past few days, well, breaks for the last few days. She's like, this little girl, this is exactly what she wants, this is exactly what she needs, what she craves, and she's like, this is gonna happen again. And again, her placement did not handle the break well. She really struggled with Adriana and her behaviors. The first time which landed her in the hospital was due to her acting out at school, throwing things at her teacher, and then turning into a dog and growling and hissing at people. And as Warren said, she was discharged from the hospital. She came back to our office, spent the day with one of our program directors and everyone in our office. She's taken over a cube in our office. She has her own cubicle now. She's spent a lot of time with everyone in my office. And when I say that I've lived and breathed this case, our whole office has been amazing in pitching in because placement took her back initially, but requested that someone from our agency be present, which we were. We had round the clock staffing sitting at the placement at her house, supervising everything until the second break, which happened at last Tuesday. She had a counseling appointment that night. And she was being forced to talk about her feelings, and she had been forced to be talking about her feelings a lot because she wasn't in school last Monday and Tuesday, and previous placement had wanted her to address these feelings. And Adriana had told her counselor, I'm done talking, I don't want to talk about it, and she kept being forced by foster mom who came to the visit. She ended up having another outburst and ran out of the building, which is next to hooligans, ran out into the street, at which time I was called, and this was about 7 o'clock at night, ran into the street, and thankfully she was running, trying to get in the doors, and she ran right to the police department. And the police department were able to get her and calm her down. And so that was at 9 o'clock at night that I made it up here to come pick her up from the police department. Placement said I absolutely cannot take her home. While Adriana was calm at that point, I did take her to the hospital for an evaluation because she was running into the street. And we spent the night in the hospital that night until we were told, I was told about 1 a.m. that she wasn't going to qualify for services because she didn't threaten to harm herself or others. And so we were being sent home, which again, she came back and lived in our office. But it's literally been, reaching out, our whole office, reaching out to find a new placement for her. We held an FTM. We reached out to both of the parents asking for any relatives that she would possibly know that we could potentially place her with, and did not hear anything from either parent. Adriana was able to go back to school, but again, the placement is in Monroe County, wasn't intending on such a big change so quickly. So our agency, again, has been amazing and driving her to and from school every day. I went with her to daycare last week and got her set up at daycare again. So she's attending her same familiar daycare for the next couple of weeks while we transition her. I had the conversation with her last week that she would not be going back to Tiffany, her placement. And I don't know that she grasped it really on Tuesday, but on Thursday when I picked her up, and she said, "Oh, tomorrow's water day at daycare. I need my swimsuit. Let's just go to Tiffany's and I'll go get it." And I said, "No, honey, you can't." I go, "Tiffany's at work." And she said, "Let's just go." She's like, "No, it's fine. I'm her foster daughter." And I said, "Remember that conversation that we had 2 days ago where you're going to be living with the new family? That means you're no longer Tiffany's foster daughter." And she started crying and sobbing, and "Why doesn't anybody want me?" So there was that aspect. The next day, I get the call from the placement. "Please come get her stuff." And as I loaded up all of Adriana's stuff in my huge Yukon XL, all I could think is that this little girl does not want any more stuff. All she wants is to be loved. She wants permanency. She wants stability. She does not want things. She wants a stable home environment and someone to love her. I know I've said a lot. This case is, she cannot continue to visit with her mom. It confuses her. It gives her hope when there's no hope to be had. I just don't even, I don't know what else to say about it.
In your statements, you also included in here the letters from her therapist. Your statements kind of reflect those letters too. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Those letters were provided in March and April, so not even in the last 3 weeks.
Right. And I just reviewed the one from Jennifer, the latest one that said, I see something coming. These behaviors are escalating. Something's coming. And sure enough, something happened. And I feel like too little, too late. I'm just praying that this placement is what she needs and what can help stabilize her, and we cannot move forward if we're going to continue to allow visits with mom.
The flip side of that is the potential harm to her from stopping the visits, because she has said that she misses mom, that she wants to go home to mom, and generally is probably pretty happy to see her. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
What about that part?
Again, I think that it's going to be a lot of counseling, a lot of talking to her, but I think that the harm of her being returned to her mom when, just in this recording period, she's had 2 unknown males at her house and she's denied both ones during FTMs. We just found out after she's been telling the court and all of us all along that she's been employed by Manchester Stamp Plant since, and I have not received a copy of her pay stub since last June, July. We just found out last month that she hasn't been employed there since last July, and she's been lying to us all along saying that she's been employed there. The lies of employment, the lies of, who's living in her home and the home environment. We did go look at the house and the house is great, but who's living in the home? Who's paying for these bills? We got copies of the bills, but the bills were, they were large payments. My house is much larger than that house, and my bills are not nearly that high. So that tells me that she is way behind on her bills, and rightfully so, since if she has been employed, she hasn't told us about it. I just have so many concerns, again, as do her 3 psychologists that have done her psychological evaluations about her ability to tell the truth.
At this point, are you asking the court to make the goal for both children adoption?
I am asking, being Mr. Gilson is still a contender, I am asking that Craig's goal be changed to adoption. I am asking that Adriana's goal be changed to reunification with a fit parent.
Would it also be appropriate if the court did for Adriana a concurrent goal, so maybe adoption and also reunification with a parent?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness and would move to admit the court report with the attachments.
Mr. McFarland?
If I understand the question asked in your response, you have no objection to a dual goal for mother of reunification and or adoption. Did I hear you correctly?
Did you say reunification? No, I don't think so. No, it's been 20 months 20 months. It took her a year to get adjudicated because she wouldn't admit to any of the wrongdoings. And this wasn't her first time. I just don't see how we can continue with reunification offers at this point for her.
You're not holding the time.
Pardon me?
You're not holding the time prior to her adjudication, prior to her day in court. You're not holding that against her. Hey, hang on, I'm just finishing my question, okay? You're not holding the time prior to her adjudication trial, to her exercising her rights to trial. You're not holding that time against her, right?
No, I'm not.
Okay, thanks. You hired a psychologist, correct?
Our agency contracts with the DHHS, yes.
Okay, that's your expert that's paid to do the psychological evaluation, correct?
Okay, yes,
Okay, and they did a diagnostic impression, correct?
correct.
And your expert stated that in terms of parenting time, there's no direct evidence my client will become physically abusive in a parenting situation. You would agree to that because that's in the report, correct?
Correct.
And you're asking that her rights be terminated today, correct?
No,
Her visitation rights be, my client's visitation rights be terminated. You're not asking for that?
I am asking for visitation, yes.
The own expert you hired indicated that visitation should be structured and supervised by the Department of Health and Human Services or designate. You're not disagreeing that your own expert, who's a psychologist, that's their recommendations, correct?
Can I review this one?
Absolutely. I am looking under the recommendations. If you take a look at number 1.
Okay, that is in there.
Okay, so you're not disagreeing that that's the recommendation of your expert, the psychologist, correct? It's there. You're not disagreeing, right?
I will say that Ms. Wright's missed her first visit with us.
Hang on. But let's answer my question. My question again to you is you're not disagreeing. This is what the psychologist.
What the evaluation states, correct.
Thank you. And it further recommended that in terms of treatment, a good reference would be Keeping Families Together, a special book for my client. Have you provided that to her?
No, I just received this right in the midst of a crisis I've been dealing with over the last 2 weeks. So no, I have not provided the book to her, no.
Are you intending on doing what's recommended in these, in your
Yes,
in the
absolutely.
report?
If she would like a copy, I would be happy to obtain a copy for her.
Oh, you're gonna ask her, right?
Right.
Okay. So I take it you've not gone over this. You just basically sent this out to Ms. Wright, so you've not really gone over what you're going to do as a result of receiving this, correct?
If I may.
Sure.
She did not go to the first referral for this, and I was not able to send over my concerns and what was going on with her case to the psychologist. And had he have maybe had the information that her kids have been in care for 20 months and that she had 9 previous CPS cases, allegations, or refusal of services, I would think that his recommendations might look a little bit different.
Objection, Your Honor. This is purely speculation. It was ordered for a psychological. We have one. Now she's speculating, and she's not a psychologist. So I would object to that testimony. That's purely speculation.
Who's response?
The rules of evidence do not apply at these types of proceedings as it relates to the review hearing for a demanding hearing. The court can accept any relevant information for the weight that it determines. I think that it relates to, I know the objection is not relevant, but I think that the testimony is relevant given most of the time in a psychological evaluation, our caseworkers are able to provide a file for it to be reviewed prior to the administration of the evaluation. So I just don't think it's a valid objection at this point.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
I have no comments.
No, thanks.
All right, I'm overruling the objection. It goes more to weight than admissibility. She is in her capacity as a caseworker able to make those assessments, and it's based on her observations of facts that are in the record and that are known to her. So
So you've been on this case how long?
Since last May.
And are you asking this court not to accept the psychological evaluation, but for you to provide a psychologist with your concerns and have another psychological evaluation? Is that what you're asking us today?
There has been 3 psychological evaluations done by 3 separate psychologists during the course of this case.
Oh, you're not satisfied with this one. So my question is, are you asking for another psychological evaluation? Listen to my question, please. Are you asking for another psychological evaluation so you can give input for the results you want?
No, I am not. I would be happy to contact the psychologist, though, if the court requests to consult with them on her past actual, what's been going on in this case, and to see if the recommendations would change.
When was it that you secured this psychologist to do the evaluation?
Pardon me?
When was it that you secured this psychologist to do this evaluation?
I don't have that date in front of me.
About how long ago?
I'm gonna guess January, February, maybe?
So you're saying from January to February, you've not had sufficient time to submit a list to the psychologist of issues that you want the psychologist to know before the evaluation?
So it's a very interesting way to do referrals, because Dr. Haugen is very busy, and actually our monitor is the one who handles the scheduling. So they receive the referral, but none of the paperwork, and then they would normally reach out to us and request the documentation or paperwork or whatever, and they did not reach out to us to get that.
Who is the they?
Dr. Haugen's office.
But you knew that this Dr. Hogan's office was going to be performing it, correct?
Correct.
So you could have sent that to him without them requesting it, correct?
I could have, sure.
Nothing prevented you from doing that.
Sure.
My client told me while she was out in the hall, while we were dealing with some other issues, that she had sent to you by text some additional documentation. I don't expect you to have read that, but perhaps did you take a look at your text to see if you received anything from my client? Just this afternoon before the hearing, maybe an hour or so before?
No.
Okay.
I was on my phone though while we were waiting, and I didn't receive anything from her.
Nothing further.
Ms. Heiss?
Thank you. Am I wrong, or are you providing little toys and behavior rewards for these visits that you supervise?
Yes, we do.
Is that the agency that supplies those?
Yeah, myself, the agency.
And you're taking the kids to ice cream and that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
To fill time?
Yes.
So this safety plan that was in your court report talks about a period of time that your agency was in a safety plan for 24/7 or some kind of waking hours, that you were there at the placement's home, correct?
Correct.
Did mother have any resources to chime in and give you someone who could do some of those hours?
No.
So like, Beth or anybody?
No.
Mom received this hospital discharge report in the court report, correct?
Correct.
Has she followed through on any of the recommendations that you know of?
No, not that I'm aware of, no.
This placement that had Adriana had been complaining for quite some time that there was a connection between Adriana's outbursts and her time with her mother, correct?
Correct, yes.
Would you characterize this placement as frustrated with the fact that Adriana, there was that connection?
Yes.
And then the relationship broke down after the first hospitalization or the second?
It was, she asked her to be moved. So back in April, there was also another incident where she came home from school and was upset. I don't remember the circumstances because the last 2 weeks have honestly been a blur. But she called me, and my supervisor called our on-call number because Adriana it was her first episode, was in April. And she was screaming, crying, uncontrollable, and she put her in her room to let her have her tantrum, but was very, overwhelmed with the situation. And I came and helped calm her down. We did a phone conversation with Jennifer Franklin, which also helped to calm Adriana down in the situation. So the hospitalization was not the first go around. It wasn't, but it was the final thing where she said, these behaviors are just too big, that I cannot help her anymore.
So this home was a single woman who was taking care of this child, correct?
Correct.
Lots of pets, but Adriana was the only child in the home, correct?
Correct.
So the daycare provider was a relative of the foster mother.
Correct.
The foster mother is a professional in the community.
Correct.
Full-time employed.
Correct.
She had brought extra resources to Adriana, like dance class, right?
Correct.
And just all kinds of opportunities, daddy-daughter dance.
Trip to Florida for a week.
So that placement, was it ever potentially permanent?
It was, yes.
There was a risk in this hospitalization that mother's attention would do what to Adriana?
I'm sorry.
Was there a risk in this hospitalization that Adriana would see it as a way to get her mom's attention?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what the social worker at the hospital had said.
Even at the hospital, was mom consistently there when she said she would be?
No.
Can you tell me something about that?
I know that her and Adriana's dad had left for periods together to go retrieve things and would be gone for hours.
Longer than they said they would be gone, correct?
Yeah.
So this next placement for Adriana, is not a potential permanent placement, correct?
Correct.
So the timing of stopping mom's visits and this fresh start in Monroe, would that be good for the child?
Yes.
And summer break is starting for this child too?
Friday is her last day.
But your agency is committed to keeping her at her prior school?
Yes, we've been driving. I'm driving her tomorrow and Wednesday.
I noticed that we don't have a Brene Moore report in this court report. What's up with that?
I have not spoken with Renee. My supervisor, Ashley Beach, has been talking to Renee regarding what's going on with Ashley. So I don't have anything to report on.
So our April report would have been our last one from Ms. Moore?
Correct.
Okay. So we don't know if she's attending or not attending?
Correct.
So this report, the psychological evaluation indicates low self-disclosure tendency for Ms. Wright. Is that something that you've noticed?
Obviously, throughout the duration of the case, yes.
It results in an elevated lie scale. Is that
Right.
something you've experienced?
Yes.
It also talks about that she's an individual who tries to present herself as responsible, conscientious, and conforming. Have you found that to be true?
Yes.
Do you think she thinks she is conforming?
Do I think she? Yes, I do.
So
When
who-
Adriana had her outburst on Thursday night, she was like, she's upset right now because you're lying to her because, she thinks, and I said, I would never lie to her. Like, I try to be as kind and as gentle as possible, but I am never going to lie to your daughter. So yeah, she does believe that she's following the case service plan and that she's making progress and wants her kids back.
So that visit on Thursday was in Dundee?
Correct.
And a church that your agency has partnered with to make this possible? So a family-centered room?
Yes.
And I was there for a period, but after I left, is it true that you had to contact Craig's Placement to come get him early?
Correct, yes.
So there was some chaos there.
Correct.
And it sounds like Adriana was running around outside,
Correct.
but then Craig's Placement was able to calm Adriana down.
Correct.
Craig's Placement is a fictive kin.
Correct.
Thank you, I have nothing further.
Any redirect? No, Your Honor. Recross?
Just one question based upon Ms. Heist's question. Going back to the psychological report, there is no recommendation for termination of my client's parental rights, correct?
We're not talking about terminating parental rights today.
Well, you are asking that the goal be changed to adoption,
Oh, yes.
which would be termination of my client's
Okay,
parental
yes.
rights.
Sorry.
You're
Yeah.
not withdrawing that, right?
Sorry. No.
Okay, so you would agree that, once again, there is no recommendation for my client's termination of parental rights based upon your expert psychologist, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further.
Ms. Burke, did you have any questions?
I have no further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you for your testimony. My returns. Anyone else would like us to hear from Ms. Thomas? No, Your Honor. Okay, Ms. Berger?
Yes, Mr. Gilson, would you like to testify?
Not at this time, as I have not been able to fully review all the documents that had been brought up today.
Okay, I have no witnesses.
All right, Mr. McFarland?
My client would like to testify, Your Honor. Ashley, what do you believe the agency is asking for today?
I believe they're asking to terminate my visitation.
You also understand that they want the goal change to termination of your parental rights.
Yes.
You've heard the testimony of the worker here today, and you wish to clarify some things that she said, correct?
Yes,
Remember, the time frame we're looking at is only from the last hearing to today, okay?
correct.
What did you wish to clarify or correct?
There's quite a few things that I feel,
I'll start with one at a time. Go that way.
yes, okay, let's start with, Adrian's first outburst. She had a dance recital that Saturday. The following day was to have a visit. It was canceled due to being told that the recital counted as a visitation. During that recital, I didn't really get to spend a lot of one-on-one time with her. We did do pictures and things afterwards.
Just a public recital, right?
Yes, so it was very it wasn't like a visit normally is. She had 2 shows. I went to both. The first one I watched the pictures, things like that. The second one I had helped Craig and his placement know which one she was in and see her where she was during the thing, during the dances and things. And
So basically, what you're telling us is that really wasn't
it was a parent doing an extracurricular. It was not a visit. So the next day I was to have a visit. I put both children in the car, and it's each separate car, and I said I will see you tomorrow. We talked about, things they might want to do in food and put them in the car. I said, I'll see you tomorrow, gave them hugs and all of those things. And then I left. And I was told the next morning after I had already confirmed that the visit was to be canceled because I had spent plenty of time with them during that previous day.
So you think they expected you to be there and they weren't, and perhaps that's maybe what happened?
I'm not sure.
Okay, what's the next inconsistency that you?
So the next day, I had a regular scheduled visit. The Sunday was to make up for not seeing her that entire week because of the practices. And then Saturday was the recital. Sunday was canceled. Monday was canceled due to her behavior. She had an outburst. And yes, she did speak with the counselor and things. But she also spoke with me afterwards on Zoom. And during that time, she had told me that she was upset she didn't get to see me on that Sunday. I told her I was upset too, and that sometimes those things just happen and we have to just, be careful.
Let's stop you. Did anybody
Yeah.
correct? Let me just stop you right there. Did anybody stop you when you were having that conversation that
No.
was monitored? Now, listen to me first. Anybody stop you while you're having that monitored conversation and say your comments are inappropriate?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
So then after our short, conversation about it, Christy was present and it was a Zoom call. And she had stated that she thought that it was maybe that, but it was also because of the busy weekend and the week that she had. We had talked to Adriana about that, and she said she was tired, but it was really, she just was upset about the following day or the previous day. And I felt like her feelings were disregarded. And then also we had talked about what had actually happened because Adriana did lie about the incident that she had, and we had talked to her through that. Christy and I both kind of together for that as well during that. So it was a Monday. So that Monday that had got canceled because of her behavior. So that is one thing I would like to be known, I guess.
What about the employment? The worker indicated that you lied to the entire court and everybody about having employment when you didn't. What's your position?
Well, I mean, quite frankly, if I didn't have employment, I wouldn't be able to pay my bills. Yes, I have had some large payments. However, the large payment that I have, the largest one that I have is that I can recall regularly is my light bill. That is because I am on a plan to pay off a previous balance because my apartment and my home was in one.
But she said you were lying, that you were working when you weren't. Is that true?
No, I was employed.
At that same place?
Yes. So I
Now,
was.
hang on a second. You answered that. Do you think you need to go any further? You've answered that you weren't lying. So,
Okay.
Today, you told me that you were attempting to send the worker some documents, right?
Yes,
Apparently she didn't receive them, so you'll need to give her some copies.
I can
What-
email them.
What were the updates that you gave her that you want the court to know?
Friday, when I got my paycheck from my work, it is a new employment that I have discussed with them extensively since starting.
So you gave her a paycheck to show you're employed
Yes.
someplace new. Where is that? How much do you make?
I'm employed through, it is, on the pay stub, it is called Great Lakes. It is called Alara. It is a home healthcare.
How many hours a week and what's your pay?
Up to 40. Right now my hours are right around 20 to 40, because I'm trying to get regular schedules and things. In the past about 2-3 weeks since I have started, I have had to take days off and leave early due to issues that, with her being in the hospital and appointments and things. But
If this court does not suspend your parenting time, will you be able to work around parenting time schedule as it exists right now? And you've also sent some other documents regarding payment of bills, correct?
yes, so one was from consumers that had said that I'm not in shut-off mode and I'm up to date on payments. I showed the receipt and that letter. I showed the payment and the previous balance and paid off balance of the gas and the water bill as well. In those documents, and again, my pay stub.
So you're pretty good financial standing with your house?
Yes, I'm not behind. I also did that as well. I showed a letter. I got a letter from the landlord that I paid to, stating that I am up to date and not behind on anything with her as well.
Do you want to address today them stating that there were 2 times during this last period that they found individuals in your house that are not appropriate?
Well, I can tell you that they've been in my home once. I've offered them to randomly come. They have not done so. We have.
No, I'm saying that they indicate that they viewed individuals in your house this last period that aren't supposed to be there.
I'm unaware of when or who, due to I don't have dates, I don't have times. I do have, I have hired some people to pick up things like junk, but that is really it.
Is it any individuals that aren't supposed to be there?
No, these are people I found through like private businesses and things.
Do you want to follow the recommendations that the psychologist gave?
Yes, I do believe that both kids really, I'm not saying that they never had needed services they have. I've been having a hard time getting them into things. So I will take whatever recommendations to heart and do what I need to do to have them continue.
And what are you doing now to keep on your own mental health regimen?
I meet with Renee once a week.
She brought out anything to you that you're not doing something accurate or giving you any new suggestions, because we don't have a court report. I just wonder, has she given you any input?
No, no.
How do you think that those visits are going with her?
I mean, they are a little bit spotty in scheduling times. Scheduling can be tricky sometimes, but.
I just mean the gist of the meetings themselves about you getting.
When we do meet, which is a lot, I mean, I'm not saying we don't meet, but we usually meet late in the day, and we talk about the things that are happening currently and also previously, because there's feelings and things, right? We talk about my childhood. We've done a timeline on just like things that I remember and my feelings on those. We do lots of things.
Do you think you're learning things that would put you on a path for reunification and not termination of your criminal rights?
I do think that seeing her is beneficial, if that's what you're asking.
Right. Do you think you're learning things, though, that would help reunification, which means that children go back with you and not that their rights be terminated? Do you think you're learning things?
Yes, I mean, I've done parenting classes and I've met with her and we've talked about the parenting and all of those things. Her and I talk extensively about everything. I even give her reports that I get from the workers and we read them together. So I feel like we work very well together.
She go over the psychologist report with you or not?
Not yet.
Okay. Have we covered what you wanted us to cover today?
Really, I just want to touch base some more on Adriana's outbursts.
Okay.
So that was her first one, and then her second one, yes, she was in the hospital and I was there every day. I did speak with the doctors, the social worker, all of the people involved.
What did you learn from that?
I do believe that she did it not knowing what would happen. And then, once she realized we all showed up, she was very excited. And she might not have understood why. She probably, I know she didn't understand what being admitted looked like, and she didn't understand that we weren't going to be there. We tried to explain that if that were to happen. I think that initially she was just reacting to whatever was bothering her, and that was not her intention, but she ended up seeing that that was what had happened. I'm not saying that it was intentional, because I don't think that it was. But I do think that, I'm not saying that it was beneficial, but I do think it was a little bit for her to see that we all cared for her and that, you know, we were there. But I also agree with that she got the wrong idea of it, due to the fact that when she was in the hospital, they allowed her extra amenities that they normally don't, for kids in that situation, which I believe had something to do with placement working there and having knowledge of that. I feel like she didn't understand what was going on after
She's
she
how old now?
went to the hospital, because it never happened before.
And she's how old now?
Nine.
Okay.
And then the next placement, or I'm sorry, admission, we did find out late, it was about 10:30 at night. Could not do anything whatsoever until the following morning. She was released before I got there, so I didn't speak to any of the doctors that time. I don't think that she realized that it wasn't going to be like last time. I don't think that she even thought that it was going to put her there. I think she just, again, reacted in a way that she thought was the right way for her.
Do you have any insight on her reactions, why they're happening?
She did tell me that she was upset with school. She felt like she was being picked on by adults and children. She said it to me during visitation and at the hospital and to CMH staff. She said that she felt that she was being picked on, and that was her reaction, and we talked about the right reactions. And you know, we did a lot of talking about her reaction and how to handle it, which we've always kind of done with her. And then she also, you know, had an issue where she had come to me that Monday after she was released and said that she had felt like she didn't understand why she wasn't going to school. I asked her what she did. She told me that she was told that she was to think of it as school and she was going to be talking about her feelings. She was very upset about it. She's like, why can't I do this after school? I told her I didn't know she needed to talk to placement and worker, because I didn't fully know what was going on at the time until after I had spoken with them.
So I hear everybody's hearing your story, but I guess for time constraints here, and so everybody's focused on what you're saying. What's the bottom line, what you're
The
trying to tell
bottom
us from
line
your
is
observation?
I feel like she felt like, yes, I'm not, okay, so they were pushing her to talk to a point that it was excessive. It was all day. That is how she voiced it to me. Yes, she needs to talk about her feelings, but I feel like keeping her from school all day to talk about them and telling her that that's why she's staying home is a little excessive. I don't disagree that she needs to talk about it, but I feel like whether that was the intention, she felt that way and it wasn't being heard. Okay.
Thank you. Just so people can get to
Yeah,
the bottom line of that.
that was my bottom line. I'm sorry.
Oh, we'll see if anybody else has questions.
When is the last time you were employed, before your current employment?
I left CSP, I started there on a Thursday and the Friday before, so it's been 3 paychecks from there. They were limited hours at the new place, so it was the week before that, it was the Friday before that. So I went roughly, what is it? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 6 days without
Your,
employment.
not the current employment, but the prior employment, how many hours had you been getting it there?
I'm considered full-time, but due to having to take days off and time off and things, I did not always get 40 hours, but usually I did.
So what's the problem in giving pay stubs to the caseworker?
I didn't get actual pay stubs, they were online. I have to call them and get access. I have spoken with them about getting a, like, I don't know what it would be considered, like a letter or something as well, or how to log in or something for that.
So in 8 months of you working there, you couldn't get that done?
They had told me that they had sent things over, and every time Christina had spoken about it, she said she didn't get it.
When was your last visit with Renee Moore?
I did not see her this weekend, but it was, I believe, the prior weekend. We meet usually on Saturdays. I did not meet with her Memorial Weekend, but the following weekend I did.
So right now you're getting 20 to 40 hours per week at your new job, correct?
Yes,
And you received this court report? Yes?
yes.
What, have you followed the recommendations from the doctor, from the hospitalization?
I haven't really done much with Adriana. I have talked to her counselor prior to all these things. I've done prior to again, but not since. I was just informed Thursday that they are changing her counselor. So
Do you know what her diagnosis was at the hospital?
No.
It's on the paperwork. Is there a reason you don't know?
I just don't recall. Okay,
Did you read it?
I did.
Do you intend to follow these recommendations on the discharge paperwork?
Yes.
Are you receiving any child support for any child?
I have been informed from Robert that he has paid, but I have not received anything.
Since when?
Since when what?
Have you received any child
I
support?
have not, I've not physically received it. I've been told that it's been sent to them, but they have not sent me anything.
So you have not had any child support to you?
No, none, ever.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Your Honor, as relates to Mr. Gilson's initial order of disposition, we just asked the court put that case service plan in part of the court order for him to get started on services. As relates to the parenting time request, Your Honor, the standard is parenting time to be suspended if there's a risk of harm to the child's mental health, physical health, or overall well-being. And at this time, the letters from the child's therapist, who has the very regular contact with the child for months now, has been hinting and noting that there are concerns about what parenting time is doing for this young one, for both mom and dad, which is very concerning. I think, Your Honor, this testimony from Ms. Brinker today was quite powerful. We've been here for nearly 2 years, and we are all familiar with the cycle and pattern of the agency making a recommendation and asking for more, and the court asking for more, and then there being an excuse why more is not happening. I'm not sure if simple things like employment, why a staffing agency or an employer would indicate that termination or employment was terminated in July of 2022 if that weren't true. And it also lines up with the fact that there haven't been any pay stubs, but we're in June of 2022. So simple things like that. And then in addition to the psychological evaluations that have been submitted during this case, Ms. McFarland's lines of questioning indicate perhaps an argument that our experts, the psychologists, those recommendations need to have great weight. And not to diminish that, but I think that the purpose and the relevance is mostly to show if there has been any progress since the last one, and whether there's been benefit from services. And as Ms. Heiss has noted, there's still issues of the ability to be internally reflective, to be truthful, to present self in a false positive light, but also sort of this idea that she is doing everything that's right. And it is a tough case because these children do want to be with their mom, they do want to see her, but it seems that that bond is almost, it is not almost, but it is being harmful. It's presenting that harm to the children's emotional and psychological health. For those reasons, we would ask that the parenting time be suspended as relates to Ms. Wright's. And we would ask that the goal for both children be adoption. We don't focus on the outcome for the parents, and we focus on what the child needs. And both children need permanency through adoption. We do have a newer father who's now participating, or maybe, and we do intend to monitor that very closely for Adriana, but time is of the essence for these children. We are beyond that 15-month mark out of the last 22, and that standard has nothing to do with the date of disposition. That's a ground for termination, not the standard for whether or not a petition for termination should be ordered, and frankly, we don't have a compelling reason not to do that at this time. So we would request the court accept those goal changes and also issue or order us to file that petition as relates to Ms. Wright's. Otherwise, a standard 90-day review to allow for some stabilization, with the understanding that perhaps even an expedited review to ensure there's continued stabilization would be appropriate. Thank you.
Ms. Burke.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. At this time, my client is asking that his parenting time continue and that it be expanded if and when that becomes appropriate. And that he be specifically referred those services that Ms. Brinker mentioned, like parenting time classes in his local area or anywhere where he would be able to access them, and that he be supported in those services, and that the communication with the agency stay open. That way he can continue to work through these services.
Mr. McFarland?
Well, when this minor child had the breakdown to the extent that she had to be hospitalized, it was not immediately during a visit with my client. It was when she was in what was considered a secure, safe, appropriate placement, Your Honor, in this case. Say my client has something to do with that when this is happening and this child is living with approved bedded placement. We can't take care of this child. She's not being hospitalized during the visits with my client. You may think that she acted inappropriate, but it doesn't appear that things were appropriately working out that she had to be hospitalized at the placement. And yes, it was a request of the agency that my client submit to yet another psychological evaluation. Early since January, February, they could have had their concerns to this psychologist who they knew it was going to be referred to. And they can't say, now we don't like the results of our own expert, who is a psychologist expert in this field, that doesn't support my client's rights being terminated, does support continued visits. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say we want our expert to examine your client and then say, well, we don't like what our expert said. They're the expert. That's why we go to them. We are asking that the goal continue to be reunification. If there is a fallback, it'd be a joint goal of reunification and or adoption, Your Honor. That's the way the court wants to do that. But we also have perhaps another viable parent in this case who's just starting on this case. So I'm not sure if it really makes concern to terminate on one parent when the other parent may very well be successful. That's our position.
Ms. Heiss?
Your Honor, the counselor has weighed in here and has made the connection between the visiting the mother and the outburst. She says she's finding it very unhelpful for the connection to be developed between the child, Adriana, and her father. He does have a new case service plan, and we wish him well in that, but I would ask you to consider the goal of adoption for these children. And then I have nothing further. Thank you.
The court finds all interested parties were given notice for purposes of today's review and permanency planning hearing, as well as the initial disposition hearing on Robert Gilson. I have reviewed the case services plan for Mr. Gilson. It identifies in large part the barriers that face him in his now very forward request for reunification with his child. I have serious concerns that are raised as a result of the remarks made by Ms. Jennifer Franklin about visitation by Mr. Gilson at this time, both because of Mr. Gilson's actions, but more importantly, because of the fragility of his daughter's mental health at this time, which has been, since that letter was written, supported or unfortunately borne out by a couple of hospitalizations and serious behavioral outbursts, which have compromised her placement, which was previously a potential for replacements in the event the reunification was unsuccessful. The case is deteriorating rather than accelerating. For that reason, Mr. Gilson has moved away. He appears not committed to engage immediately in services which were already arranged for him. And so because of those issues, I am making visitation at the discretion of of the child's therapist until she finds that it is not a risk to the harm of his daughter. Mr. Gilson will have to respect the opinion of the therapist who is actively treating his daughter and who predicted, unfortunately, some of the really serious issues that his daughter has been confronting in the recent weeks. So we will respect her opinions on this and respect the child's need to recover and suspend visitations unless and until the therapist allows those. The same goes for Ms. Wright, who was all parties were provided the court report, case services plans, and exhibits for purposes of today's hearing. Again, we have at the heart of this case a child who is having very serious behavioral issues. The older child is having been removed September 20th, 2021. Many of the same concerns echoed in the most recent psychological report as the remarks and concerns indicated at the outset for the mother. Continues to be a bit of a disconcerting experience, frankly, to listen to these reviews, given the lack of verification of any of the statements that are made by the mother in this case, and then also the absolute certainty with which we've found her to be disingenuous on more than one occasion. So unfortunately, without substantiating the fact that she is caught up on any bills, the fact that she has housing, the fact that she has employment, coupled with the concerns indicated in the psychological evaluation, her lack of understanding about why her child was hospitalized in the first place, her diagnosis, and her very evasive, sure, yes, I'm going to be following the safety plan business that indicates to this court that she's not very serious about that, is very consistent, by the way, with the findings of the psychological evaluation that she's going to be painting herself in a light more friendly than what is reality. We will wait and see if there are any affirmative testable verifications of benefit to services, as well as to any of the other areas that we continue to see barriers for women's rights. And Mr. Gilson, I would express those concerns, and we'll expect to see him battening down the hatches and tackling those services and establishing himself shortly, because as was accurately stated, this case is about the children, and they've been in care for a serious period of time, making stability and permanency of the utmost importance. Last thing we want to do is see any more compromises on their care, or service providers, or people that have determined that they wanted to step up and try to provide for these children while we were waiting for Ms. Wright to produce some tangible proof that she's benefiting from services, or for Mr. Gilson to step up and take responsibility for his child. It was rather a last-minute decision to pivot from termination at the outset of Mr. Gilson's case to reunification. So it will be, frankly, a short leash. There's been a significant period of time during which he's been absent from his child's life, and this move out of the area so immediately is pretty indicative of the difficulty in changing that particular pattern. I do find that reasonable efforts towards the goal of reunification are being made by the agency. Obviously, those have been extraordinary in this case. So thank you to Ms. Brinker and the staff at Fostering Solutions for stepping up and doing that. I think we would likely have the oldest child in this case in far worse shape than she is now if it weren't for the efforts of our caseworkers. So this court will join in supporting the request for suspension of visitation as it relates to Ms. Wright's as well, leaving the same discretion to the therapist. So if she is able to find that the older child is in a place where she can handle that, then so be it. But until we've heard that definitively, I do find there's a serious risk of harm to her mental health, correlated by the behavioral instances, as well as the hospitalizations that we've seen, again, borne out by the predictions of the therapists and professionals in this case. And I'm not interested in further challenging her in that way during the next report period. The goal for the children is an interesting question. We're waiting to see if Mr. Gilson will step up. We've rather had some frustrating continuation of barriers from his rights. As it relates to Craig, the goal will certainly be adoption. He is hopefully making his way into a home that will be an option for permanency for him. I have not heard that there's a risk of harm associated with his visits, so those will continue. However, given the serious red flags and issues that his older sister is experiencing, I am certainly curious to know whether or not this child is having any issues associated with that. And I'm obviously ready to receive any information to act in the best interest of that child if we need to. The goal for Adriana will remain reunification with a fit parent in the next report period, but that is a very thin, frankly, I struggled with that decision today. I nearly made adoption the goal for both children, given Mr. Gilson's actions in the very short period of time we've had since the adjudication. We'll give him one more report period to show us that he's serious about engaging in services and providing for his daughter. And we'll look at permanency again at our next review, August 29th at 10 o'clock in the morning, which will be review and permanency planning hearing. Mr. Gilson will be ordered into his initial dispositional order, which will also have attached to it the field services plan, which we will monitor his progress in. And I'm sure Ms. Hines will continue her satisfactory performance of her obligations as guardian ad litem as she has done so far. Thank you.
8/29, at what time?